Everyone, one last time.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Harinam Sankirtan ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Hari.
So we are so fortunate tonight we have as our guest of honor great Kalakantha Prabhu, who's quite well known in circles of ISKCON, dedication, Krishna House programs in Gainesville, and spreading throughout the society of North America. And it is with great appreciation that I would like to introduce him as our guest speaker this evening. Kalakantha, could you kind of raise your hand? There he is.
Haribo.
And he's going to speak to us, and perhaps you will do a Jai Radha Madhava before you speak. And bring about one kirtan after Jai Radha Madhava and then speak.
Everyone knows this? Jai Radha Madhava?
Enough people.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Bhagiri Varenari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Bhagiri Varenari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiramvanachari Jamuna Tiramvanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Bhagiri Varenari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tirambanachari Jamuna Tirambanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gaura Premanandi.
Kalakantha, I'm very apologetic when the Pyramid House, the speaker gets the lowest seat in the house.
That is appropriate, and I can see the top of your head, Nrsingananda Prabhu, so yes, perfect. Do we have a Bhagavad Gita there? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Very nice to be here tonight. Thank you for coming. As we know, our dear hosts, Nitya Manjari and Nrsingananda Prabhu, we want to thank them very much. And as you know, Nrsingananda Prabhu has just had knee surgery. He has a knee replacement. And he told me that he apologized during the lecture that he might have to stand up and walk around from time to time and may wince in pain. And I told him that I'm quite accustomed to that happening during my lectures. So, tonight, I'd like to read something from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. How many people here are students of Bhagavad Gita, have read Bhagavad Gita? Okay. How many people here are hearing Bhagavad Gita or just learning about it for first time or recently? Anyone? How many aren't sure? Anyway, the Bhagavad Gita is known as the textbook of yoga. Let me ask you this. How many people here practice yoga? Okay. All right. How many people here consider themselves yogis? Okay, so we got a few yogis and a few uncertains. But the Gita is a wonderful book because it is a textbook of yoga. All the different types of yoga are presented. And tonight I'm going to read from the 6th chapter, which is about the type of yoga which most of us are familiar with. That is the meditation, the renunciation, the austerity, and how it's introduced in relation to the highest form of yoga. So in this chapter, chapter 6, text 4, the beautiful Sanskrit verse goes like this. Yadahi nindriyarteshu na karmeshvanu sajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rudha tadochyate. A person is said to have attained to yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So Srila Prabhupada writes, when a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, he is pleased in himself and no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. What does that mean, fruitive activities? What is a fruitive action? Can anyone say? This is an unusual word in America. What do you think it implies?
When we expect the result of our action.
Pardon me?
When we expect the result.
Yes. Yes, we're acting for a fruit. We're acting for a fruit. We're getting a paycheck. If we don't get a paycheck, we're not going to go to work. It's fruitive action. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification, since no one can live without engagement. Without Krishna consciousness, one must always be seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Krishna conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. Yoga means, in other words, to be freed of material desires. Does that appeal to you? Would it improve your life to be, how would it improve your life to be free of material desires? Anyone like to say?
More happiness.
What's the problem with material desires? Oh, we have an announcement from Nitya Manjari.
One announcement, please. Who needs translation in Russian? Can you please sit in one side? And Natasha, can you translate, please? Where is Natasha? Вот туда, где Наташа. Сядьте туда все. Кому нужен перевод? С ее родителями. Потому что они приходят люди, они не могут повторить. Сюда. Can you please speak a little?
More slowly.
Yeah, like sentence by sentence, so they can translate.
Got it. Okay.
Сейчас, just 1 second.
Okay.
Да, сядьте все вместе. Надо было перевернуть. Ну ладно. На пуфе прямо сядьте туда. Да, садитесь на пуфе. Да. Все, все сели. Все.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so glad you folks are coming to hear about Krishna. And I'll try to speak slowly so that you can follow. Kansas, you were saying that you'd like to be free of material desires. Right?
Yes, because it creates more happiness, because once you have one desire fulfilled, then it's unsatisfiable.
It's-
Another one replaces it, and another one replaces it, and it's an endless cycle.
It's an endless cycle trying to fulfill material desires. Because when you fulfill one, then you want to fulfill the next one. And you're like a dog chasing its tail, going nowhere. Very busy, but not accomplishing anything. Yes, very good. Yoga means to break that cycle of chasing material desires. Another problem with material desires is that, again, even if we get them, they only have a short time of satisfaction. For example, in the summer, an ice cream cone is wonderful. Everyone loves an ice cream cone. So you go to the stand, you buy an ice cream cone. And it's really good, so you go back, I'll have another one. You buy another one. And then the man says, you know, we have a special, the next one is half off. So it's, okay, I can't resist, so half off. And then he says, the next one is free. Oh, free. I'm very full, but I'll take it if it's free. And then he says, the next one, we'll give you $1 to take it. And you say, I can't eat another one. This is the problem with material desires. They have a satiation. We get what we want, and then we find out that it hasn't made us happy. Yoga means to find happiness within.
Kalakantha, slow it down just 10%, will you?
Okay. Yoga means finding happiness within. And happiness within has no limitation. When we tap into inner happiness, nothing outside can affect it. When we get it, it keeps getting better and better. This stage of perfection is called trance or samadhi, when one's mind is completely restrained from material desires by practice of yoga. This is characterized by one's ability to see the soul with the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the soul. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from materialism. What the Bhagavad Gita is saying is that in this world we have basically two types of people. We have materialists and yogis. The materialist means that one is trying to find pleasure outside of one's body, outside of oneself. Yogi means one knows how to find pleasure within oneself. Yoga takes practice, it takes discipline, but as we're reading, the rewards are incomparable because they don't come to an end. We don't get tired of them. There's a beautiful example of the difference between a yogi and a materialist. The body is described as a chariot. And this chariot has 5 horses. The 5 horses are 5 senses. Sense of touch, the sense of taste, the sense of smell, the sense of sight, and the sense of sound. So these 5 senses, our tongue, our skin, our nose, our eyes, and our ears, are always pulling the chariot of the body. The driver of this chariot is the mind. Because all of the experiences that we've ever had are contained in our mind. All of the things we've enjoyed, all of the people we've loved, all of the places we've gone, all these memories are stored in our minds. And so the mind is directing the senses to go here or to go there. At least that's the ideal. The passenger in the chariot is the spirit, the Atma, the soul. The soul is not material. Whereas the body dies, the soul never dies. Where the body is born, the soul is never born. It is endless and goes from body to body, life to life. A materialist has the dangerous situation of letting the senses be in charge. So it's like a chariot being pulled by uncontrolled horses. You don't know where it's going to end up. A yogi is one who manages to control the mind and thus directs the senses to go wherever the passenger desires. Imagine you've got an Uber and you told the Uber driver, go here. And the Uber driver says, actually, I feel like going there. Take me to LAX. Actually, I think I'll go to Santa Monica. But I need to go to LAX. Yeah, but I'm driving, so you just sit back and go wherever I take you. This is the sad plight of a materialist. It is very hard to progress in life, isn't it? If we don't know where we want to go. A friend once told me, it's better to be a meaningful specific than a wandering generality. If we have a specific goal in mind, we can line up our mind and our senses and our body to get there. So here lies the difference between a yogi and a materialist. A materialist's goal is to enjoy things in this world as much as possible. This is natural when one is young, especially, because the senses are very strong. And the sense of life stretches out before us without end. The older we get, the more we become aware of our mortality, our limited time, as well as the more we lose our ability to use our senses for enjoying ourselves. I live in Florida, and down at the tip of Florida is Miami Beach. And if you go to Miami Beach, you will see lots of old people showing you parts of their bodies you wish they wouldn't show you. Trying to relive the glories of their youth. A friend called it the world's largest changing bodies exhibition. Such a life is very sad because these people, being materialists, have never learned how to enjoy anything other than outside of themselves. When our happiness depends on things outside of ourselves, we're subject to so many difficulties. For example, if our happiness lies in a relationship, that relationship may come to an end through death, through decision, through divorce, and then we hurt because our source of happiness has gone away. If we are dependent on the weather for our Saturday activities, the temperature may rise, or the clouds may roll in, or any number of things may happen and rain on our parade. Thus, a materialist is in a very precarious position, very dependent on things beyond his or her control. A yogi, on the other hand, knows how to find happiness within. Whether it's raining or sunny, hot or cold, the yogi is indifferent because of mastering that ability to find happiness within oneself. So Lord Buddha taught that the same thing, that suffering comes from desires. If we stop, he had 4 noble truths. Desire causes suffering. Life is suffering. Suffering comes from desire. You stop desire, you stop suffering. And then the 4th truth is the 8-fold path for stopping desires. The problem with just stopping desires is explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Sanskrit, the beautiful verse goes, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina raso varja raso pyasya param drishtva nivartante. One may stop or suppress desires, but the taste for desire will still remain. The habit, the inclination, the addiction. But by experiencing a higher pleasure, one can be freed of the imprisonment of desire. So what is that higher pleasure? We don't want to just repress desire, we need to replace it with something better. This is yoga. The pleasure coming from the soul surpasses the pleasure coming from the body. That is a tall statement. Because the pleasures from the body we know very well. The pleasures from the soul are unfamiliar. So in practical spiritual life, the whole foundation is to enjoy on a higher platform. The great teacher of yoga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is here on the altar with his brother, Lord Nityananda, taught us how to enjoy on a higher platform in a very simple way. He taught that simply vibrating transcendental spiritual sound connects our deeper self with the absolute truth. And that experience surpasses anything we can experience through the mind or the body. Now, we can talk about that pleasure because we've experienced it, those of us who are very fortunate to practice bhakti yoga. But the experience itself has to be undertaken by each individual. It's not a matter, in other words, of just believing something. So that pleasure, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us, comes from chanting the holy names of Krishna. It goes like this. Please repeat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama Rama.
Rama Rama.
Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
That's not too hard. So chanting awakens pleasure, but it has to be experienced. One wife who was enjoying chanting told her husband, "Chant, chant, chant." And her husband said, "Can't, can't, can't." The same amount of energy he was putting into negativity could have been put into chanting. People who don't want to experience anything beyond materialism will find this chanting very troublesome. But people with an open mind, who are ready for something better in life, will experiment with the chanting and try. Chanting Hare Krishna will generate a higher taste in your life. That is our proposition. If you try chanting and don't like it, you can always go back to not chanting. It comes with a karma back guarantee. You can come right back to where you were, and nothing is lost. But if by chanting you experience a higher taste, just imagine the blessing that would be in your life. Imagine if you could give up bad habits very easily, without struggle, without conflict, just because you're tapping into happiness on a higher platform. How does that sound? Imagine if you could enjoy better relationships with people in your life, because you no longer expect them to scratch your back. You are in the mood of making them happy, as opposed to wanting them to make you happy. You're not dependent on them to make you happy anymore, because your happiness is coming from chanting Hare Krishna. These are just some of the amazing benefits of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So how do you chant? There's no hard and fast rules. Although it's very good to chant early in the day. Because if you chant early in the day, you are vaccinated. You are inoculated for the day. And if the virus of desire comes in your vicinity, that inoculation will allow you to defeat it by your immune system. So this chanting begins the whole awakening of yoga and self-realization. It's so very, very easy. But it does take a commitment to practice. It can begin with 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. As you develop, your taste for chanting will naturally increase. You may increase it to 20, 30 minutes or more. People who are experienced in chanting can easily chant for an hour and a half every day and feel no inconvenience. In fact, if they don't get to chant, they're missing it terribly. And then that increased chanting just increases one's spiritual power and ability to enjoy on the higher platform of yoga. So this kind of yoga does not depend on a flexible spine. It doesn't require breaking a sweat, but it does require a commitment to escape from the addictions to material happiness. One has to make up one's mind. I am tired of being a materialist. I want to be a yogi. That spiritual goal is so easily attained by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Sometimes people say, well, this is Hinduism. They think it's a sectarian practice. But in fact, the Hare Krishna mantra is one name of God, but God has unlimited names. So if one were to chant, for example, Jehovah, or Allah, or even Buddha, one would get the same benefit. The higher taste would awaken. But it's not a mechanical practice. One gentleman asked my teacher, why should I chant Hare Krishna? Why not chant Coca-Cola? And my teacher said, chant Coca-Cola, and when you get tired, chant Hare Krishna. The meaning of Hare Krishna is a prayer to the Supreme to be connected with Him in a loving relationship. It is not anything less than a petition for love. In this world, we are all looking for a loving relationship. But as I mentioned, the material relationships, loving relationships, are always ephemeral, they're always temporary. So please take this great benediction of chanting with you and practice it and awaken your loving relationship with the Supreme. Let's try it again. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Krishnagannatha Prabhu, would you like to say a few words? Okay. Any questions or reflections?
For the very nice discussion today. Very much appreciated. Thank you for coming out this far just to give lecture today. And I have a question. I mean, you paint a really nice picture, a very idyllic picture. Everything seems so nice and rosy and beautiful.
Uh-oh.
But we know that it's not always like that. And many people who come to Krishna consciousness, they get a taste, but then it might go away very quickly. or they find that they're struggling with their mind to change, or that their material desires don't go away so quickly. They keep coming back, and then they go through the struggles along the way. So you just mentioned something that I wanted to ask you. I've heard so often about this thing called sadhu sangha, and the importance of associating with other sadhus. So you didn't talk about that very much, but I think it's probably an important point. Could you talk about that just for a moment? Tell us how that's important for us to experience what you're describing.
Yes, thank you. Yes. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a 12-step program where one attempts to turn addiction to the divine love. And one of the essential practices for addicts, for alcoholics, is to meet regularly and honestly discuss their addiction. When materialists are seeking to become yogis, they need to meet regularly for the same purpose. Sense Gratifiers Anonymous. And the process begins by acknowledging our addiction. The process grows by hearing the experiences of others, seeing their struggles, relating to their struggles, giving them encouragement, taking encouragement from them. Even further, one needs a mentor or a sponsor who will take responsibility for helping the person overcome their addiction. So in the spiritual life, this is called a guru or a spiritual master. So we want to associate with people who are committed to the path of yoga, and whenever possible, to associate with people who have mastered the path of yoga, at least to the point where they're not eminently deviating from their practice. So this is called, as you said, sadhu sangha, and it's very, very powerful. In fact, just a little bit of sadhu sangha can inspire one to progress rapidly on the path of yoga. So a gathering like this, where our purpose is entirely nourishing our spirituality, will accelerate and cement our progress on the spiritual path. What you said is very true. It's that we may take up yoga, but then have trouble maintaining it. If I may go on just another moment, in the Bhagavad Gita, the student, Arjuna, says the very same thing to Krishna, the teacher. He says, what if I start on the yoga path, but then I fail? Then I've given up my material pursuits, and I've failed in my spiritual pursuits. So I'm just like a drifting cloud with no direction and no success in either sphere. So Krishna says to him, it is undoubtedly difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by practice. And one who endeavors in that noble way will never be overcome by evil. There is no loss, in other words, if we try for yoga, even if we fail. Because the soul is eternal, Krishna explains, the unsuccessful yogi in their next life gets born into a very favorable situation. I used to wonder this when I was in Sunday school as a child. If God is all good and God's all powerful, why are some people born rich and some people poor? Some people healthy and some people sick? My teacher said, it's one of the mysteries of God. And that never satisfied me. It wasn't until I heard from Bhagavad Gita that I could understand it is our responsibility where we end up and not God's. So trying on yoga, on the yoga path, and even if we fail, will guarantee us a better situation in the next life, where where we can again continue with our yoga practice. Materially, if we have money and spend it, it's gone. But spiritually, if we have credit, it goes over into the next life, and we proceed from that point. It can never be withdrawn from our spiritual bank account. So these are some of the benefits of yoga and association with other yogis. I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, actually, just to go on that just a moment longer, one of the things that is a big deal nowadays, people talk about is negativity. So here I am, let's say, I'm curious about bhakti, I'm curious about Krishna consciousness, I like what you say, I'm getting inspired. So I want to get involved, I start with chanting, but then I go back to my normal life, and then the ordinary people around me, and I lose the concentration, and I start getting involved with some negative relationships. I come back to the sadhu sangha, I get inspired, go back and get uninspired, kind of like back and forth. So you seem like a very level-headed devotee. How do I deal with the negative relationships in my life to divorce myself from them or transform those around me? What do you suggest?
That vaccination of chanting before we encounter the negative energies in this world, that's the first thing. And in Christianity, they say you have to pick up your cross every day if you actually want to follow Jesus. So in yoga, we have to pick up our chanting beads every day. That's our inoculation, as I said. You see, when we no longer have ulterior motives in our relationships, people look at us in a different way. When we no longer depend on what someone else does for our happiness, people sense that. They feel different about us. And that negativity can be transformed into at least curiosity. We have a very strong propensity to defend our false sense of self that comes with materialism. In spiritual life, that goes away. We realize that we are foolishly addicted to things that can't make us happy. So instead of thinking ourselves big shots, we begin to realize we're really dumb. We've made some very dumb mistakes. And so if people are negative towards us, well, they have every right to be, because we have been really stupid. This is the opposite of the materialist who's trying to promote a big picture of himself to others. So in very subtle but powerful ways, all these negative influences diminish as we progress in our yoga. But there's no substitute for chanting. You can't just do it by belief or by philosophical pursuit. One has to actually experience the taste of chanting. And that will protect one from the negativity and bring positivity to those around you. So we can become the kind of person who brings joy wherever he goes, not whenever he goes. Okay? Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Any other questions? Any questions at all about anything?
And I will refer it to Nrsingananda.
Nobody has any, in the Vedic tradition, when you don't have any questions, it means you agree with everything.
I would like to reflect on the first question that Prabhu asked, that when we go in the, like you said in the beginning, we have to, in the beginning you mentioned that we have to commit ourselves to start chanting, chant the holy names. But like Prabhu, the question that Prabhu asked, he said that there are too many material desires which obstruct us, which make us avoid to commit something. So one of the possible solutions based on Prabhupada's example, Prabhupada gave us an example, is about a patient. When a patient is suffering with a disease, the doctor suggests a particular kind of diet to follow. And that diet may not be delicious, it might be very simple, and may not be preferred by the patient, the diet. So, but then if we do not commit ourselves to that diet that the doctor prescribed, then we are bound to continue with the diseases and may not cure ourselves.
Yes.
But then at that moment, if we go against our desires temporarily and suffer that inconvenience temporarily, then we are bound to get cured and get back on the right track.
Very good. So some voluntary restraint.
Exactly. Voluntary inconvenience. That is exactly when we go against our mental desires temporarily. So it's just a temporary inconvenience for something for a better future.
Right, very nice. Yes, you mentioned the mental attachment.
Yeah.
In this chapter, Krishna explains that the mind is a tremendous friend if we are controlling it, but a terrible enemy if it's controlling us.
Totally.
So yoga means to control the mind. The practice of yoga is like anything else that we may learn. There's 4 stages. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. We don't even know what we don't know. This is a materialist. I don't even know that there is a spiritual life. The second stage is conscious incompetence. Now I realize that I'm really attached to this material world. Now I am incompetent and I'm aware of it. Third stage is conscious competence. That if we voluntarily restrain ourselves and we voluntarily practice the positive things of chanting and associating with other spiritualists, we can maintain a spiritual life. And the final stage is unconscious competence. That without difficulty, we stay on the spiritual platform. And this is the stage of boundless inner happiness to which yogis aspire. So where are we on the spectrum? We might be consciously competent that when we really try, we can stay pure in our spiritual life. And at that stage, we may struggle, and we may have to voluntarily accept some restrictions. So in the path of Bhakti Yoga, there are some restrictions for more advanced practitioners. But we don't have to start with them. But once those become internalized and chanting becomes part of our DNA, then every day becomes full of joy. And unlike those old folks in Miami Beach, people who get old practicing yoga have the blissful feeling of, I'm coming closer to the finish line. I have risen to the spiritual platform and I've maintained it. And so every day becomes a cause for celebration. Another day, another year, and a full life lived in spiritual practice. So people are naturally attracted to such people who are self-controlled, self-contained, and internally happy. That's another beautiful part of yoga. Yeah. As you get older, people get interested in you because you seem to know something. So it's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life, the life of a yogi. It's absolutely horrible to the materialist, but it's blissful from inside. Anything else?
Any other comments or questions? We're going to have a kirtan before dinner. Sorry, would you, Clyde is going to lead a kirtan.
Please.
She just went out to get her harmonium
Okay.
or her car. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, of course. Oh, go ahead.
Yes?
Nita had a question.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, is it all right?
Yes, please.
So you're mentioning how we start chanting 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. We start with a positive change to our lifestyle. Start chanting, adding the chanting to our life. Do we have to change anything else in the rest of our day so that we can keep like feeling the happiness that we chant for those 30 minutes? Or
We don't have to change anything to get more happiness from chanting. But if we want to get even more happiness, we can stop eating meat. That's the biggest obstacle on the path of spiritual life. And the reason is simple, because the animal that we may want to eat also has a spirit soul. So it is horribly insensitive and obscures the sensitivity of spirituality that we see. But even if we're addicted or accustomed to eating meat, it's okay, we can start chanting. And the rest can come later.
While she prepares, can you just briefly tell the story of Nagari?
Yes, there was a hunter who had been trained in hunting by his father to kill animals in a most cruel way. He would wound them and disable them with his weapons, and then leave them to suffer slowly a painful and miserable death. So a great saint was coming through the forest, and he saw these animals in various painful conditions, terminal conditions, and wondered, why would anyone do that? Then he came upon the hunter, whose name was Mrigari. And he asked him, why do you only half kill these animals? And he said, I just do what my father taught me. I know no other way to live. So Narada Muni explained to him that the life in every living being is precious, is divine, is immortal, and beyond the purview of man to control. And he explained to him the path of yoga by which he could come to a new way of life. So by the powerful instructions of this saint, Narada Muni, Mrigari transformed himself. He stopped killing animals. He started eating a plant-based diet. And he started meditation and prayer and began the path of yoga. So sometime later, Narada Muni was again traveling through this area with his friend Parvat Muni. And they saw a most incredible sight. There was a man in the distance walking on a path, and he stopped and with his shawl began sweeping the ground in front of him, because there were ants on the ground and he didn't want to step on them. Didn't want to dare cause them any suffering. So Parvat Muni asked, who is this man? Narada said, this is my disciple, Mrigari. I don't know if he gave him a new name. And he explained, formerly he was so violent, but now he won't even kill an ant. This is the transformative power of yoga.
And that circles back to Ma Shakti's issue of sadhusanga. Advanced devotees, one automatically advances in spiritual life, or can advance in spiritual life.
Good.
Kalakantha Prabhu, thank you so much for coming out today. When was the last time you were here?
3.5, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. It's a long period. We welcome you. We hope that you'll return again and again.
Thank you.
We now would like to, before dinner, we'd like to have prasad. I'd like to have Clyde lead us in a kirtan to again absorb ourselves in the holy name.